You are part of this training session for Sierra Reference, for those reference librarians doing work with Sierra. I hope this information session will be helpful for you. I've tried to put together a list of the most commonly used areas in Millennium that we can use in Sierra for reference work. Just so you know who I am, this is Steve Heiser calling in from MCFLS, the Library Systems Admin, and we're going to be talking today about Sierra. Before we get into the specifics, I'd like to talk a little bit about the meeting organization. All of you are currently muted on the line here, and that's because we'd like to organize this a little bit more, and it just helps if we can organize this with questions at the end of the session. So we're muting all participants, and if you do have questions at the end of the presentation, we'll take those at the end, and we like to do that using the chat interface at the bottom of your GoToMeeting console on the right-hand side. We are also using a training server today. This gives us more access to parts of Sierra that are not available currently in our preview mode. We'll explain a little bit more about that in a few seconds here, but we're not able to see some of the things in preview mode that we can with this training server, so we're using this, and this is Innovative's training server out in California. So I just want to let you know that there's a difference in the display. Also, the session is being recorded. We'll have that available on mcfls.org after the session's completed. Usually takes about an hour or so afterwards. And we'll also make the video recorded session available on YouTube. If you do a search for MCFLS #1 in YouTube, you'll see our channel appear there. It has our logo and a list of all the videos that we've done over the past couple of weeks here. The goals for this training are pretty simple, and I know we've got a few repeat customers out there, so it's going to sound very similar. I've tried to switch it up here on this Friday. The primary goal is to give you what you need to know to be able to work with Sierra on April 2nd and moving forward, so that when you hit April 2nd, you're able to get in and do your job. The secondary goal is to give you assurance that most of the functions work in exactly the same way as they do in Millennium. There's a few exceptions, and we'll point those out today. Some really cool stuff that Sierra offers us that Millennium does not. I also want to talk a little bit about the timetable for our implementation. The staff preview mode started Monday, March 3rd. Most of, if not all of you, should have received an email regarding the preview mode that we're in right now. This gives us about a month to kind of iron out some of the things that we can affect right now and make sure that we're ready to go on April 2nd. Now, first and foremost, we'd like you to log in and check your functionality. If you can't log in, you can contact Kate Stratner at the MCFLS Help Desk, and she can make changes for you very quickly. We also like you to check your functionality that you are seeing when you do log into Sierra. There is a functions drop-down in the upper right-hand corner, which we'll take a look at. We want you to make sure that the things that you see there are the things that you'll be able to, that you'll need come April 2nd and following, so you're able to do the things you normally would have done in Millennium. Within this preview mode from now until April 2nd, you're not going to be able to see everything or make edits to records, send notices, things like that. Those things are locked down for us. This preview mode is more or less a way to look at the data and get comfortable with the interface. If you're prevented from doing certain operations, for example, editing records, editing patron records, or editing item records, it's not because your authorizations are screwed up. Everybody's got the same authorizations as they have in Millennium. It's just that it's locked down for everyone, including myself, which is why we're using this training server in the first place. Two other things we like you to check are your printers. After you log in, make sure you have available printers that you're used to using in Millennium. You can do a real easy check. by going to File, select Printer, and then looking at Standard Printer. That's usually a good place to check and make sure the printers that display there in that box are the ones that you would normally see. So I can take a quick look at that here. I've got Millennium Circulation up. You go to File, select Printer, Standard Printer. You can see I've got a few file save as a little something that I have on my login, but everybody should at least have Local Printer and Email Printer. We set that up for all the logins. Those are what most people are going to need. Underneath Local Printer, you'll see selections for various printer, for example, your receipt printers, all of those are underneath Local Printer. The other area in Sierra that we'd like you to check are the settings. Underneath Admin Settings, there are a number of areas that we'd like you to check, mostly of your macros. If you're used to using macros, those are the function keys that we've got mapped to certain commands, usually to go between certain functions. You can compare those within Millennium and Sierra. They're in the same spot. So go back to Millennium, go to Admin Settings. You'll see the tab here for macros, and you can compare what you've got here versus what you have in Sierra. The one difference being that in Sierra, the macros for the Go menu, that's in the command menu at the top, to go between certain functions is changed a little bit, and we'll talk about that. April 2nd is still our go live date. That's a Wednesday. The system will be unavailable the entire day, similar to January 20th. Offline Circ will be available for those who use that. Everyone will be using, if you're using Offline Circ, you'll be using a amended version of it because the port number has to change within the program. Most of you have got that information. I'll be setting that out today or early next week. It looks identical to the other Offline Circ that we use, but it just uses the different port number, and there's a different icon for it, so you know it's different. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the basics with using Sierra first, and then we'll talk about some of the specific areas related to reference work. I'm going to go ahead and log in here so we can get this started. The process for logging in is going to be different based on where you're located. For the Milwaukee Public Library staff, it involves a process similar to Millennium because many of the staff members at MPL neighborhood libraries will rotate to different branches. So we've set that up so that you will have a process similar to Millennium where you put in your Sierra login first that sets the location, and then your initials immediately afterward. Which will give you the permissions you need to do what you've been accustomed to doing. The process for suburban staff is a little simpler. If you're set up for like most folks, you will only have to put in your initials because the settings for your location served and your printers and your print templates, all of those are merged now with your initials. You don't have to have a separate login because you're all at the same location. You're not going to be rotating. The only exception to this would be those folks working at the service areas, service desks like the CERC desk or reference desk. Some libraries may set you up so that you still have to use that Millennium type login, and that's going to vary based on your location and how you do the setup there. The reason being is that some libraries like to swap out users during the day. So for example, if you're doing a 2-hour shift at reference, some libraries prefer that you clear your initials before you leave the desk and enter your initials when you sit down. That's the way it works at some libraries. In order for us to do that, we have to set up those Millennium type logins like MC40 or MCAT and have you log in that way, or MSTA. For MPL, that doesn't make any difference. You're going to be doing that same type Millennium login for the immediate future. Okay, so we're logged into Sierra right now. This is their training server out in California. I did want to mention one thing regarding your password. Your initial password you're using right now in Millennium should be the same that you're using here in Sierra when we go live on April 2nd. To change your password in Sierra, you now only have to use the admin menu option at the top and click on Change Password. You no longer have to use the CountyCat SSH or CountyCat InnoPack client to change your password. This is all going to be done in Sierra. So that makes me very happy, and I'm sure many people as well. Regarding the SSH client, the InnoPack client that we've been using in the past, almost all the functions now related to that text-based SSH client are going away. They're going to be merged into the Sierra client. There may be some exceptions to that, but most of everything that's left in that SSH client after we go to Sierra is going to be related to admin functions like what I would do to alter coding within our database. There's really nothing in there left for staff to use. The catalog's gone, the rapid updating is gone. All that stuff is now going to be used in Sierra and the Sierra client. Just a few notes about the interface here before we get into some searching. The layout of the screens, the major difference with Sierra versus Millennium is that Sierra uses a unified client. So you log in once and you don't have to skip around the different modules. There's no more circulation module, cataloging, staff module, serials or acquisitions. All of those are merged into one interface that you then use this drop down here in the upper right to navigate from one function to the next. So if I wanted to go from the catalog to the checkout desk, I just click on checkout desk and then my information appears here. Go back to the catalog here. The command menu you see here at the top where it says File, Edit, View, Go, Tools, Admin, Reports, and Help. This is going to look pretty much the same as it does in Millennium with a couple of exceptions. It is context sensitive, so many of the things that you'll see here in the Tools menu will change based on what function you're in. So I'm in Catalog right now. If I change this to Checkout Desk, go back to Tools, that looks a little different than what we had just seen here in the Catalog function. There is some precedent for that in Millennium. It's not that different from what you're used to seeing. The one thing that I did want to mention that was brought to my attention by one of the librarians, Rachel Collins at MPL, was this reports area. This is where you'll get access to your web management reports. There's a link that goes directly to that website that has the web management reports for circulation and user reports. And the new circulation activity reports, they've got 4 versions of those reports. Those are located here. These are on their training server, so I'm not going to click on these right now. But almost all the logins should have that. If you don't see that reports menu, I've had to make some changes this week to make that appear for all the MPL libraries. If you don't see that reports area, please let me know and I can help you out. Just a little sidebar here about these functions here in Sierra. They're using new terminology. You may hear me use the old Millennium references to modules and modes and buttons, but they refer to these areas here in the capitalized text as workflows, and they can be customized. So there's a serials check-in workflow, front desk circ, administration, so on and so forth. We have serials, circulation, cataloging, and so forth. The areas underneath each major heading are called functions, and these correspond to those buttons or modes that you would use in Millennium. If we go back to Millennium quickly, these areas here you see for Cert Desk, Check-in, these buttons here we used to call modes in Millennium are now just being called functions. So it's just a minor point about the language. As I mentioned before, the macros or those function keys that you may be used to using in Millennium are going to be altered slightly. And I think we've made most of the changes that need to be made. Some of those function keys didn't work correctly in the first place, so we've corrected a lot of that. If you go underneath the Go menu, you'll see what I'm talking about. Since all the old modules like circ, cataloging, all those are included into one unified client, we now have to alter the macros, so there's this extra step to accommodate, for example, circulation. We have to include this circulation step in the macro in order for them to work, but that's just a minor point. If it doesn't work, the macros don't work, that's something that we can change fairly quickly for you. We can alter those. If you have other macros that you've been using in Millennium, those all transferred over. All we do is alter the Go command menu so that they would work the way they should in Sierra. And just so you know, all modules and functions in Millennium have counterparts in Sierra. There is nothing missing from the client. There's changes in terms of functionality and where things are located, but for the most part, all of the functions you see in Millennium are things that we're going to have access to in Sierra, just so you know that. And another important point is just because you see a function here in the list in this drop-down does not mean that you have access to it. So, for example, your circades are not going to have access to global update in cataloging and making massive changes to the database. The function list may appear here, but your staff are only going to have the authorizations that they had in Millennium. So just so you're aware of that, just because you see it here doesn't mean you have access to it. When we go live here on April 2nd, we're going to be offering a lot of information in this drop-down, but we will be scaling that back as soon as we go live. We just wanted to make sure that everyone had access to what they need to do their jobs on April 2nd. After a week or so has passed, we'll start working with libraries to customize this and make sure that, for example, the shelvers or circades don't have access to things they don't need to see. But at least going with April 2nd, we wanted to make sure everyone had access to things. But we can customize those workflows before too long after we go live. One of the great things about Sierra, and I'm really looking forward to this, is Sierra means no more locked or busied records, and in theory, no more broken holes. This is great news for everybody, I think. It's a function of the PostgreSQL database that they're using. It allows multiple edits to be made, currently using a buffer, so it allows multiple edits to occur even if there's another person accessing the same record. It just puts it in a buffer and applies the changes afterward. This also means e-commerce patrons will no longer have problems paying during backups or when their record is open on Millennium, which is a problem that we've had for many years now. So this allows that to happen during backups, during the hours of like 2 to 3 a.m. People will be able to pay online without any problems. I've noticed it's actually happened already since we're using a new backup program. Okay, so I'm going to go into search holds mode. I'm going to find that because that's mostly a reference function that we're going to be setting up for most folks. Search holds mode is how you're going to be using the database. I'm going to do a quick search here for Inferno. It's not the Dan Brown book so much as Dante. Just a quick note, we'll be using the same indices as before. Nothing's changed there. This is their training server, so that they're using different indices. But if we go back to Millennium here, it's the same list of indexes that you'll see here in Sierra. Do a quick search here against the database. This is where things have changed quite a bit in Sierra versus what we're currently doing. This is their default view of search results, and I want to spend a little bit of time talking about this because I know a lot of you will be spending a lot of time here. First off, the center area looks a lot different in their default view in Sierra. It has a lot more information. It doesn't give you the indexed entries in this default view, but we'll talk about alternatives in a second. What you have here in the center view is just the brief information about the title, location, ISBN if available. There is 2 additional columns in this view for summary. It'll tell you the bib record number, whether there's at least 1 item available on the bib, and the number of items, orders, or check-ins, check-in records on this bib. When we're live with our system, we will also be able to see our book jackets here in this preview column, and those are where those will appear. They don't have it set up in this training server, and we don't have it in preview yet, but I've been told that will need to happen after we go live on April 2nd, so all that information will be here. What's really different about this view in Sierra is that we do have these little icons for that little eye with the circle around it. If you mouse over it, you don't even have to click on it, just mouse over. It'll give you more information about the title. So it's the version of the preview that we're used to seeing in Millennium. So if we go back and we do a search here do the same search in Millennium, you'll notice that this preview pane here at the top, let's just use this one here, includes author, title, imprint, description, and that's kind of the equivalent of this eye icon, if you will, on the side here. This is the default view of the browsing results. Many reference librarians may prefer that current Millennium view. If we go back, you'll notice that we have all of the indexed results here in this list for my title search for Inferno. This is looking at the title index and all the entries that start with Inferno. We have the option here in Sierra to do the same. So I'm going to bring up a screenshot. This is, hopefully you can see this. This is a screenshot of how this would look in Sierra if we use what's called the compact browse view of search results. And I'm sure many of you may prefer this to what you're currently seeing here in Sierra, but this gives us this preview pane at the top, just like we have in Millennium, and the list of results by index entry. So just so you know that that's available. If you prefer this view, please talk to me, because I think we will need to talk. For the MPL folks, I don't think that'll be a problem. We can just make the change for that login. And for the Suburban folks, actually it's going to be even easier. We can just make that change for you. It's just a checkbox that we need to use, and then we can add that compact browse to your settings. They'll need to be working with us to do this, because otherwise it won't save it permanently in the settings area. Regardless of which view you choose, either the default view here or the compact browse, you always have this left-hand column to work with as well. Now, this phrase area, if you're using compact browse, will disappear if you're using that setting. In default view, it does show up, so it's kind of the alternative to your index entries here. This is how it appears in this default view. The only problem with that is if you have a really long list of index entries, this phrase area goes quite a bit down the list here. So this is a fairly simple one. There could be many more entries here in this phrase area. Otherwise, the facets here for format, language, locations, and availability are very similar to what we're using in Encore. These are available in all workflows, not just search holds. You'll see this also with Patron browsing. obviously the indexed entries are a little bit different there. You're basically just seeing patron names, but for the catalog, this is how it will look. And it works very similar to Encore. Then if I wanted to double-click on Encore Public Library, all my results will be limited to that location, and it will work the same way for us. Right now there's a display issue with the locations for us. That's going to be corrected, I hope, very shortly. They've been telling me it's going to happen any day. So just so you know that that is also available to you, you can just double-click and you can get rid of it with the X. It'll reload the facets and your search results right after that. The limit button that used to be, if we go back to Millennium, is up here. It's got that hand symbol there. The limit button is no longer in the same location. It's there, but it's not a button anymore. It's this plus symbol next to the search button. So if we click on the plus, all of those limits will appear here. So I can add a limit, for example, for printed book, and then location of Emeryville Public Library. It has the same functionality as our current Millennium. It just works a lot better because it's using a different indexing process. I think I didn't do that correctly. Let's see. Oh, okay. I guess it didn't really change anything. So I think it's because all of these entries are for Emeryville Public Library. Okay, just so you know that is there and it's working the same way as it does in Millennium. Okay, I'm going to do another full record search here just so you know what that looks like. Since it's the 30-year anniversary of my favorite movie, I'm going to type in that. Spinal Tap is 30 years old. It makes me feel really old. Oops, it's limited. My fault. Okay, so we have one record for This is Spinal Tap video recording. As you can see here, the display looks quite a bit different, but it looks somewhat familiar. If you play around with Sierra, you'll notice that many of the tabs that we had in, for example, the full record view of bibliographic records, those tabs have been moved over to the left side here. And all those tabs have been moved over to the left, and really nothing has been removed, but they're all the same there. Then the full record display, I mean, this is the summary view. If we click on the Edit button here in the full record, this is more of a typical MARC record that you would see in our database. This has been changed slightly to, I think it's a much better view of the full bibliographic record because you can actually see where these indicators line up next to the MARC tags. But this is just a full record view. All the coding and all of the settings that we have, including loan rules, fixed fields, all of those have been moved over already into Sierra and are ready to go right now. So we can actually see what those look like. This is created to look more like an OCLC display from what I've been told. There is a little bit of a change here in this full record display in that the Browse button that we used to have, we go into a record here, The Browse button is usually in the center of this row of buttons here within Millennium. So if we click on it, then it gets rid of this entry and back to the Browse screen. It depends, in Sierra, it depends on how you're set up. If you're using multi-window mode, it will react a little bit differently, but the Browse button is now always going to be here on the far left-hand side of the screen, so you just need to know where to look for it. If you click on that, then it just goes back to our browse results. We only have one available here. So if you're in multiple window mode, it will keep the records that you have open, but it will take you back to the browse screen. So you'll have multiple windows in Sierra, but it will take you back to the browse screen. Okay, I'm going to go back in here, and I'm going to place a hold just so you know what that looks like. Since many of you do place holds for patrons, just want to walk through that process. It's really not different. I'm in the summary view now. I'm looking at 2 item records. If I'm going to do a hold copy return soonest, which is a title level hold, or hold the selected item, I have those 2 options. So I'll go ahead and place a title level hold here. And I will look myself up by name. I'm in their database. Okay, so it's found me by my name immediately and put it in this view here. This number of holds doesn't show up for us, so it's not relevant for us, but most of these other fields are. Your pickup location is the same as always. You leave it here. Then this not wanted after date will be filled in with the date a year from now, so that it will expire if it's not filled by that date. Page for title, and then you will see the billable hold appear here on the record. So I'm set up as a public library staff, but all this will look the same to you once you start working with it in Sierra. Okay, so that's just a real quick look at placing a hold. There's not much to it. It's literally the same process that you've been using. If we go back to this area here, just to take a look at one of these really cool new features we discovered. If you go underneath it, you have to be in search holds mode to see this, but there's a nice new function underneath tools. Let me just close out the record here. Apparently you have to close out the record to see this, but if you click on tools, there is a function here called browse query that I think you will really find useful for reference work in particular. If I click on this, this gives me a window that looks similar to a create list search box, but in actuality it's a kind of an advanced search against the database that you can use to put into your browse results very quickly. For example, if there's a field that's not indexed but you want to search on it, and the example that I've been using for the sessions here is that of a patron phone number or a patron email address. If I want to look for one of those, I can do that quickly without having to wait for a list to run its course. Our lists generally take about 10 to 15 minutes to run, so that's time you could be spent doing something else. So if I was to put in a patron email address, let's just say patron email address has gmail.com. You could put in something more specific, obviously, if you're doing a search for a patron, but we'll just use gmail.com as our example. If I click on search, then it will return 2 patrons with gmail.com within their email address field. So you can see the applications for this would be fairly significant. You can do a really quick search against a field that's not indexed, that's not title, subject, or author, and just pull it right into your search results. So if I double click on this patron here, this one has smitht@gmail.com. That's why it came up. And let's see, we'll go back and do that same search again because I wanted to show you the other one. get James Baxter here because I thought that was pretty funny. Beware with a capital B. This person was difficult. Be aware. Not sure who edited this, but I thought it was pretty funny. I just thought I'd point that out. Please don't put those messages in records. But I just wanted to make you aware of that function here. If I hit that browse button, it goes back to my browse screen. But this tool can be used for a number of different purposes that I'm sure you can use your imagination for. A couple of things to be aware of, though. It's really good for quick searches of information, but if you're looking for really large result sets, it does tend to bog down a little bit because it has to perform that search against the database. If you're doing that and you want to retain the information that you get from those results, you're better off using a create list search instead. So if you have the time to do a create list search and you want to print off or export the information you get, you're better off using a create list query than this browse query. However, you can go back in here. You can use existing searches. If there's an existing search in create list that you want to use, you can apply it in a browse query. You can also retrieve a saved query. So if I have a saved query in my create list area that I want to apply, for example, a patron phone number search or biz with nothing attached, I don't know why you do that. But you can choose any of your existing saved searches and apply it to a browse query and make it really quick to find a patron phone number or whatever you're looking for. Okay, I wanted to go back to search hold, circulation decimal. I wanted to show you a few things there. This is kind of talking about some of the reference functions. If you're looking at a patron record and you want to get more information about them, we can do a barcode scan as you can within Millennium, or we can do a name search. You still have to use that N to get into the name index. If I hit enter here, we've got one of the innovative traders here, so I'll just use his. He's got some information on his record here. So as you can see, the messages pop up. As you can see here, the tabs that are also in the patron record view have been moved over to buttons on the left-hand side of the screen. These areas are pretty much the same. They haven't really changed too much. It's kind of hard to see here, but there is an area here for fines that is in red type, and that has been, it just kind of flags it a little bit, and I believe that's the same way in Millennium. I could be mistaken, but that's kind of an alert for you to indicate that something needs to be done with that record or should be alerted to. We go back to the patron browse. I should have stepped back for a sec. This is when you're looking at the patron index based on name. You can see that this looks a lot different than it does in Millennium. You have the ability to look at other patrons within the same list. If we look at a bigger results set, you can see where this might be helpful for a great many of our patrons who have the same last name. You can just go right down the list here and choose the that particular patron in the list. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my test patron. Just one other thing I wanted to mention about this this view here. You'll see this I here as well for this patron. This gives you more information about their record, so you don't have to go into the full view of the record to see everything, notes and messages. I have been contacted by staff already that wanted to add specific fields to this area, and unfortunately it's coded in right now, but they're working on getting this area freed up so we can add fields to it. One other thing about this is that the list of fields in this view, for example, name, barcode, expiration date, birth date, patron type, This is their default view where you get 2 columns of data. If we go to a custom view, which is possible, we can pick the fields that display here, but anything beyond 5 fields requires you to use a scroll bar, which appears here in this area. Since we use patron photos, those patron photos will appear on this far right-hand side of the screen. That's where they appear in preview. You've probably seen that already. Okay, so that's just a brief view of the patron record. I want to also talk very briefly about some other areas related to reference. We go into notices mode. This is where you would look at your title paging lists or item paging lists. They don't have quite as many jobs as we do, but I did create a paging list test here at the bottom. Just assume that this might be the one for your library. If you click on that list or list entry and then click on prepare, it'll ask you the same prompts. This looks almost identical to what we're currently using. And so there is my Spinal Tap video recording, so I'll definitely get this video today, I'm sure. But it looks identical. There's really no differences here. All of our notice jobs have been brought over, and there's no need to recreate anything. So I'm hopeful that that will work right out of the box come April 2nd. A few other areas that might be of interest, view outstanding holds. This is view holds in Circ module, but it looks identical to what you're currently doing. So you want to search for holds placed before a certain date. This is usually the default date is the current date. And then you can put in a name, barcode, hold status. So if I wanted on hold shelf, click on view outstanding holds and everything appears there that's on the hold shelf. And this looks identical to what we're currently doing. Unfortunately, there's no real good way to export this data. I was hoping that that would change with Sierra, but it hasn't. The good news is that we can probably create a SQL query that will get this information out. Once we have that established, we can share that with libraries. There's a lot of circulation transaction data that we can pull out of the system now. 2 other areas I just wanted to point out look almost identical. Rapid update. Depending on what your modules or workflow is going to look like, you'll probably see rapid update. Looks identical. There's really no difference here. I can choose my field to modify, look at a review file, and then make changes just as I have within Millennium. And then I can just apply this and make the changes. So nothing really is really different here. And lastly, I wanted to just talk a little bit about create lists because I know a lot of you use that process looking at data. If we look at create lists in this list here, it doesn't look very different. I think it uses the space better. But as you can see, all those tabs that we have here, we'll go back into Millennium. If we go to create lists, you'll see the tabs here at the top have now been put on the left-hand side of the screen. And but everything else for the most part is the same, but I wanted to show you some new fields that we have access to that we didn't have before. So if we perform a new search, there are a couple areas in the patron record that we have access to that we've never had. So we'll just call this test. Choose the patron record field. I think you can actually see this in the browse query in our preview mode as well, so it doesn't necessarily have to be create lists. In this main screen here, we see all the fixed fields and variable length fields that you have access to. These areas here for last name, middle name, name suffix, don't work in our case. All of the entries for name are listed under last name. So it's really not going to do anything for you. We don't have the ability to swap that information out into different fields yet, but we can work on that. The things that do work here are the postal code, the city address. Those two in particular I have worked with in our preview mode, and they seem to work. I can actually pull out all the zip codes that have, for example, 53233, and put those into a list. So there's no need to massage the data anymore to get to the zip code. You just put in the zip code in this field. The other two areas that are really going to be cool are these holds fields that we've never had access to. So you'll finally be able to determine whether or not a patron has a frozen hold on their record using this. So it's like hold frozen equal to true. So that you could determine whether or not a patron in this list has a frozen hold. And you can do that from the opposite angle, I believe, also with item records. So you could also determine whether or not the hold is frozen from the opposite side of the spectrum in the item record. Go back to patron view here. So we have hold information, for example, when it was placed, it's frozen, when it expires, the hold pickup location. All these are for active holds. You're looking at active data, things that are current now. In the fines area, you also have information regarding fines, for example, the item charge, the fine paid amount, checkout date, all kinds of information related to fines we've never had access to as well. So that's just a real quick overview of some of the changes related to reference in Sierra. One other thing I would mention is that the print templates will work the same as Millennium. There's no difference. You may want to check to make sure that the same templates are set up for your Millennium login as it is in Sierra, but they are there. They just may need to be assigned. Okay, so we've got about a few minutes left here. I'd like to open it up for some questions. Amy has already posted one here. She says, FYI, I've had issues with the plus limiter next to the search box working when I've been exploring Sierra. I may need to talk with you, Amy, about searches that we can run, because that's something we should address with them now. It may be a function of the fact that we're in preview mode, but I'd like to get those things kind of ironed out. So if you could contact me offline here and let me know a few searches that I can share with them, that would really be helpful for me. But if you have any other questions, feel free to type away in the chat interface, and we'll see what we can answer. Amy did have a question here. I'll get a bunch. Oh, awesome. Amy Cronin question, is placing holds from the patron's record the same process? I believe so. Let's take a look at that real quickly. My module around here. Okay, so let's just go into our test record here. So we're looking at Michael Monroy's record. If we go to holds, we can add a hold from the record, pick the title. Hold copy returned soonest. Just leave everything the same. And it should add it to his record. So yeah, it's pretty much the same. I don't think anything has really changed with regard to that. Michelle asks, will Sierra searches be speedy like Millennium or slow like Encore? I think we're benefiting from a few different things here with Sierra that we've never had before. I need to talk to you about slow like Encore because we just fixed some problems related to that, so I may need to talk to you offline about that. We do have, there's a new type of indexing that's part of Sierra that we don't have in Millennium called Lucene indexing. It's supposed to allow a speedier type search against the database. So I think it's going to be more like Millennium, if anything, because you're looking at a lot of the same organization on the screen. And there may be less data that needs to come across, unlike Encore. So I think if it's going to be anything, it's probably going to be better than both, I hope. Let's see. Mary Ross had a question about, is it possible to show us how to do a 5-year no-circ list? I don't think it's possible right now to show you that, but I mean, the process is pretty much the same. Let's just take a second here to take a look at that. If we go into create list mode again, your process for searching off the 5-year no-circ is going to be the same. If we go back to Millennium and look at our list here, we do, usually the process is you choose your empty review file, click search records, type in like Tippy 5-year no-circ item records, and then you choose your so here's our master 5-year no-circ list, and then we do item, location, head, oops, has 41, and then just run that list. That's pretty much what you're going to do for a typical 5-year no-circ list. That would be different, obviously, for the central library. They have a different process for that, but for the branches, that's how it would work. If we go into Sierra, that process is going to look exactly the same. That 5-year no-circ list will be there on April 2nd, and you would just use the same process to apply to that. So I can't really do like a full-fledged list on that right now, but it is the same process. It works the same way. Let's see. Terry has a question, good one. Could we flip between compact and long list? You can have it separate for different logins, and you can't really flip between the displays. It has to be either one or the other for that session. But you could have, we could set it up so that, for example, the reference desk login has a compact browse set up so that you have the old Millennium type view at your service desk. And then if you're off desk, you could use a different type of display. We could definitely do something like that, but you can't really flip between them right now. And Greenfield had a question. I have noticed a sound when you mouse over the I button. Can this and other audible alert sounds be customized? Yes. There are some customizations that we can do with sounds, and I can look into seeing what happens with that, but I haven't really investigated to this point yet. So I can definitely, I'll write that down, and then we can follow up with you. Generally, there are default sounds that come up. You can set it up for custom sounds or the default sounds that come with Sierra. A lot of this has been imported into Sierra from Millennium, though. There's not a whole lot of changes there, but we can certainly investigate. Are there any other questions that I can address right now? And if someone is typing, I will just remind you that we do have some Q&A sessions that are going to take place on March 26th and 27th. Those are part of GoToMeeting sessions, and anything goes in those sessions in terms of subject matter. So this is kind of going to be right about a week before we go live, so the timing will be good. A lot more people will have access to preview at that point, and we'll have more feedback hopefully to share with you. Otherwise, thanks a lot for your time here today, and we of course will have this session recorded for you and available on rickless.org and YouTube. And thanks very much, and I hope you have a great weekend and a great day. Enjoy the weather.